Hello? Hello, let me know if you can hear me okay. Hi, everyone. Our webinar will begin shortly. Hi, everyone. Since it is lunchtime, I want to give everyone that signed up a chance to settle down and log in. So I will be back in just a couple of minutes. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Colocho, Mortgage Systems Training Specialist at GEM, and I would like to welcome you to our Processing Bootcamp. Before we begin, please note that the phone lines will be muted. If you have any questions, kindly enter them in the questions panel. This will be answered after the training in a follow-up email to our attendees. Also, I just sent a handout over to you guys through the chat in the webinar. If you did not receive it, just go ahead and send us an email to the training department, and we can send it to you afterwards. Or I can still send it over to you, to everyone afterwards. So remember, the lines will be muted and you can enter the questions in the questions panel, and we will answer them after the training in a follow-up email to all of you. Now, it is time for you to grab your faithful friend, pen and notepad, and we shall begin. The purpose of this training is to keep you on your toes and sharpen your skills. Our goal is to help you streamline the processing workflow and producing a well-rounded file from underwriting to funding. However, I need you to keep in mind, we are not here to tell you how to do your job. I am sure you and your branch have already established what works best for both of you. You will notice throughout the entire presentation that I am repetitious, but this is what needs to be done to avoid any missteps. So let us start with the status screen. Your number one step should always be to change in processing status before you start working on the loan. This will let everyone know that you have started working on the file and locks the loan officer out. This will help prevent any accidental changes. The home screen is the most informative screen in Byte, as you can find most of the loan information here. Also, there are a few shortcuts you can jump into. For example, you can synchronize your second and third files, jump into the status screen, processing or conversation logs, add or delete a borrower. Under file assignments, you can find out to which underwriter, doc drawer, or funder your file has been assigned to. You can review lock information, request an MI quote, and edit subordinate financing. Now, which are the areas you need to pay closer attention to while on the home screen? I would recommend to start with how many borrowers do you have? Are their names spelled correctly? Is the property address spelled correctly? Also, regarding property addresses, I would like you to note that the doc department prefers that you do not abbreviate, but instead spell out the full street name address. Another things to look out for is, what is your property type? Are the loan program, loan amount, and interest rate correct? Do you have any subordinate financing? Does the loan need MI? Is the escrow account being waived? Is this a first-time home buyer? When in the ERLA screen, it is imperative that you slow down and review each application from top to bottom. I know you have reviewed this information in the home screen, but please look again for completeness and accuracy. Social Security numbers, date of birth, citizenship, marital status, dependents, phone numbers, and nowadays, email addresses. I strongly recommend that you open the Stored Documents cabinet in the Overview pane. Detach the window and move to a separate screen. This will allow you to do a side-by-side comparison with the documentation provided in Byte, so you can be aware of any discrepancies before your file goes to underwriting. Other items to look out for while in the early screen. Have you been provided with a minimum of 2 years residency? Complete employer's name and address and phone number. Income, and what type of income do you have? Are you using salary, hourly, second jobs, overtime, bonuses, etc.? Assets. Please confirm the loan program guidelines for requirements. As you know, not all the loan programs will require the same. Liabilities. Did they import correctly? Are any of them omitted? Is the REO and ownership of any other properties completed? What is the status of the existing properties? Will they be selling it? Are they retaining it? Will it be a rental? Are they to get a gift or a grant? Please review all declarations in case borrower has added something that was not disclosed to the LO. I remember having a borrower who had to pay spousal support to her ex-husband. I know, ex-husband, that's shocking, but it does happen. Well, the LO never asked these questions of her. When I looked closely to my declarations, she had disclosed it. So ever since that day, I never forgot to review them. It will save your neck, so always review them twice. Remember, every section of the ERLA must be completed or mark the checkbox as non-applicable. Now, I myself enjoy putting puzzles together, and processing always has allowed me to do this. I like to turn everything upside down in the documentation they have provided, and I love to play the detective. For this, you're gonna need to develop that keen eye and make sure you have all the necessary pieces to complete that puzzle. So which items have to pay close attention to? Copies of the borrower's driver's license or state IDs, Social Security cards. What is the residency status? If not a US citizen, do you have the documentation needed? Also, be aware they can still buy a house if they're not permanent residents. But you have to look into your guidelines for clarification as to which statuses can and cannot. If there is a cosigner, if you do have a cosigner, do you have a relationship letter? Has the borrower recently married or divorced? And do you have those documents? Now, confirm that all documentation provided matches Byte. If not, you will need letters of explanations and in some cases, further documentation. And remember, in processing, you never leave a question unanswered. The more answers you have for your underwriting, the faster your approval. Credit reports. Most important step, the credit report should only be generated from Byte or Home Connect, never directly through the credit vendor's website. Then we move on to looking for how old is the report. Do you have a 3-merge credit report and the necessary scores for the loan program? Do debts look accurate and did they upload correctly into Byte? Are there any joint accounts or signer only on any of the accounts? Is borrower in a community property state? And is it a government loan? If yes, then do you have the spouse's credit and have you added it to the liabilities according to the loan program? Keep in mind the little details are the ones that can break your file. So once again, we are going to start looking for just the name, date of birth, and social security match with other documentation in the file and invite. Are there any derogatory items and inquiries? Any collections, charge-offs, judgments, bankruptcy, credit counseling, maybe a credit lock or a credit freeze? You will need to have the borrower contact the credit companies to remove those. Has the borrower co-signed for a loan or a mortgage? If yes, then you will need to provide 12-month payment history. Child support, borrower will need to provide documentation. I had a borrower once that his credit report was still showing child support debt, but his obligation had ended well over 3 years before. We had to send him back to the DA's office to get the release and then provide letters to the creditor vendors and to escrow so they could request the necessary documentation from the DA and have a clear title at the time of closing. Keep in mind that all of these processes will require further documentation and a lot of time to clear. So the faster you do it, the easier it's going to be for everybody. Also, don't forget to confirm AKAs have populated on the URLA screen. Assets. You need to be aware of the loan program requirements, as I said before. Not all of them are the same. I personally like to ask for enough documentation ahead than to have to call the borrower and ask him to bring me more. So to me, it never hurts to make sure that I have at least 2 full months of bank statements, and if needed, request a verification of deposit. Now, you must look at the beginning and ending balance. If there are large deposits, you will need to inquire as to why and document them. I remember a file where the borrower had a large cash deposit going into his account. He had no more money to show from anybody else. He could not get anybody to give him a gift. But it had turned out that his grandmother had passed away and had left them some money. Problem was, she had that money in a bank safe deposit box. She had stored it in their cash. So we had to get the attorney and the account trustee involved, and they were able to provide us with a copy of the safety box receipt, which, thank goodness, it was closed the same day as the deposit was made into his account. And the will stated exactly the amount of money that she had left them, which was also the exact money that was deposited into his account. But nowadays, I think it's hard to accept anybody for anybody to upset that cash deposit and use it for funds. But just to give you an idea of what to look for. And remember, again, repetitious comes over again. We must look for, does the name and address on the statements match? Is it a joint account? Is there an authorization letter from all parties on the account to use the funds? If it's a purchase and there is an earnest money deposit, can you document it? Are there enough funds to close? And where are these funds coming from? Are they going to be the borrower's own funds, a gift? Are they selling a property or a down payment? We must document accordingly. And when using retirement funds to close, you do not only need statements, but the terms of withdrawal and paper trail of those funds. Also, remember, you need to use the appropriate percentage when calculating retirement funds. And yes, the bank printouts can be used as long as the bank's URL is printed on each page. When looking at employment, we need 2 full years of verified employment. Any employment gaps over 30 days must be answered. Has borrower been with the same employer and same position? Does the year-to-date average on your W-2 support the income to qualify? Are the paychecks within the last 30 days? And do they support your year-to-date average? And does that average match your verification of employment? Are there any out of the ordinary deductions? For example, child support. Do you have overtime, bonus, or commission income? And do you need any of these incomes to qualify? Remember, you only need to document the necessary items for the borrower to qualify. If the borrower qualifies with only the base pay, then you only need to document that. I know I had an instance once where the pay stub showed less income than verification of employment. I mean, a lot less income. Well, it turned out that the borrower had received a raise, but the employer had failed to inform his payroll department. So one day before my verification of employment was received by me, he had been paid. There was a huge difference because they had to pay him that back pay that was owed to him. I had to call the payroll department, ask them very nicely, which it took a little while, but they were nice enough to send me a payroll ledger and a history of his most current pay stub. So I finally match. But you know, it's those little details that can give you a headache. Now, if you are using a second job, bonus or overtime, and they are needed to qualify, then you need a 2-year history. Self-employment, you must have 2 years 1040s with a current year-to-date profit and loss. If they file a K-1, then this needs to indicate the percentage of ownership. And in some cases, you're going to need an active business license, depending on their business. If using 1099 income, you need to verify that it will continue for the next 3 years, as well as document receipt of this income for the last 2 months. Rental income, you will need 2 years of 1040s, rental agreements, and document receipt of the last 2 months' income. Child support or alimony income, will this continue for at least 3 years? You will need copy of the court order and document payments for the last 2 years. Recently graduated and working in the field less than 2 years, borrower will need to provide a copy of diploma, degree, or school transcripts. Now, why school transcripts? Because again, I had a borrower who had an internship. He had been working for the company for a little bit over a year, but his bosses were so impressed with him that they offered him a contract at the beginning of the year. And he had been working for them a bit over 6 months, being paid, very handsomely paid. The problem was his graduation was about 2 months away. You know, sometimes you finish your credits, but you have to wait for graduation. So he had 2 more months to go to wait for that graduation. So he didn't have his diploma. So we requested the transcripts, and that's where the underwriter could see that he had the necessary units already completed and just waiting to graduate. And they got him approved. Property. If the loan is a purchase, is the purchase contract fully executed? Does it have all counter offers and addendums? Does the borrower's name, seller's name, property address, and sales price match by Pro? Are there any other names on the contract that are not on the loan file? Is the seller giving a credit or responsible for any closing cost? Who will be responsible for the transfer taxes? Are any inspections required for the contract? Important tip. When you go and order your appraisal on a purchase, always upload the full purchase contract along with any counter offers or addendums. The appraisal needs to see this and make comments in your appraisal form. AUS. You need to read the full DU or LP findings completely. This is the very first step before you send your file over to the underwriter. Do the findings appear accurate? And what are your conditions? Does it require reserves? And also, whenever you run AUS and you're getting an error code, you can always look up these error codes on Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac's websites. Or sometimes you can just do a simple Google search with that error code, but you need to tell them which one it is, whether it's DU or LP. And you'll be able to find it. That's, if we're not here and you're working on a weekend or after hours and you're trying to get that file processed, you'll be able to help yourself. We are now at the automated workflows. The SSA and 4506 are automatically ordered through Byte. When the SSA and 4506 forms are stored. Now, tip. When storing the SSA and 4506 in Byte, the forms must be clearly labeled B1 for borrower 1, B2, B3, and B4. Remember, Byte, we cannot have more than 4 borrowers. And you must be labeled them this way in the description field individually. The label should correspond to the borrower's position on the application. LDP and GSA SAM, these searches are automatically completed by the LDP SAM bot once the checklist is uploaded in Byte. Always verify that all your AKAs have entered in the URL screen along with all the party names in the party screen before you print it and upload the form into Byte. Be aware, if there is a hit on a name and there is not a clear report, every individual name must be manually checked and uploaded into the file. Please note, you can find these step-by-step instructions for both of these processes in the COOP. Flood certs. They automatically generate when initial disclosures are generated. If you need corrections, you can contact the flood company via email or phone. I will tell you that by phone is a lot faster. Usually they're on the phone right there with you and making those corrections right away, and you're going to have it in less than a minute. When ordering appraisal, please remember to confirm the type of property and the correct forms that will be needed. This will have different prices and the correct amount will need to be disclosed on the initial LE to avoid any cures. Again, you need to disclose on the initial LE the right amount to avoid any cures. You need to review the appraisal report once you receive it and make sure it is in the correct form. Like if you requested a rental income, if you have a PUD or a condo or manufacturer, so many other different properties out there. It is if the property, you should always check if the property is in a flood zone. Does value and address match the sales price and contract? Does it require repairs or termite? Any new requirements and added fees must be disclosed in a COC within 3 business days. For example, if the underwriter has requested a second review, you can always add it, but you must have a valid reason to disclose it. And it must be done within 3 business days. Oh, and one more thing, always look at those pictures. You will not believe the mistakes I have caught just by looking at those pictures. Escrow and title. Are your escrow instructions, all amendments, vesting information, preliminary report, and estimated settlement statements in the file? Vesting, always make sure how is it going to be held. If it will be in a trust, you're gonna need the documentation. If a quit claim will be needed, inform escrow right away with spouse's information to avoid any hurdles at closing. Solar, we are seeing more and more solar these days. So is there anything on the prelim or purchase contract regarding solar? Remember that these documents take time to order and process. So confirm now to avoid any delays at closing. Title, confirm that there is a 24-month title history. Does current owner's name on prelim match seller's name on the purchase contract? Are the property address and legal description the same? Are there any other liens on the property that can prevent you from closing on time? FHA and VA borrowers. Now, I am aware that these are ordered through appraisal department. However, you are the one providing the information on how to request them. So on FHA, the borrower's names in the case should always match the vesting. On VAs, the name of the certificate of eligibility should match the vesting. So if the veteran has gone through a name change from enlistment to time of home purchase, they must document the legal name change. You know, for example, if they have gotten married or they were divorced, we must double check them and document it. If you double check the names now, you should have no issues getting that file insured. If MI is required, it should be disclosed on the initial upfront disclosures. Upfront MI is zero tolerance. Failure to disclose will result in a tolerance cure. An MI quote can be obtained through Byte by clicking the quote button on the home screen. Be sure to add the MI company to the party screen. And check out ByPro manual for more information on how to enter MI in Byte. One thing I want to do is encourage you all to check out our GEM University memo and job aids in the coop. You are going to find a lot of helpful information here. You can also add them to your favorites. That way you just one little click and you know where they are. And if you click on follow this topic, you will receive a notification when any updates happen to the list. That way you will always be in the know. If you have any questions or need further assistance, please email us at the training department at gemcork.com. And this concludes our processing bootcamp training for today. I hope you enjoyed it and that you take some helpful information with you. If you have any topics you would like to see us discuss on a future presentation, please email it to us at trainingdepartment@gemcorp.com. See you next time, and thank you so much for attending.